my little yarnivores and spiderettes, Fiber Spider back again with another tutorial just for you. And today I'm going to show you how to crochet yet another excellent piece by Purple Iguana on Ravelry. This one is called the Seaside Shawl. And I had this colorway of Karen Cakes in my stash, and I thought that the colorway went perfect for the example and to go with the name. And actually, it is Karen Cakes in the colorway of Blueberry Shortcake, in case if you want to make one of your very own using the same colorway. No, I'm not sponsored, but I like to let you know what it is that I'm using, so if you want, you can duplicate it yourself. So, this pattern is so easy. You know, it works up really, really quick. In fact, I managed to make this in just a few days, actually. And the repeat is very simple. I'm going to go over that with you, of course. And if you notice, it is very similar to a previous pattern that I had done called the Wild Wheat Shawl, where it sort of radiates out from the top center. However, I found this one to be a lot simpler, and that's one of the things that I love about Purple Iguana's patterns, their simplicity. The repeats are always very, very easy to follow along, and I'm going to show you just how easy it is. So for this piece, yes, I used the Karen Cakes and I used a size I crochet hook. Now in the pattern, it suggests using a fingering weight yarn and a size H hook. Use really whatever it is that works for you. That's what I always say. For this piece, I used the better part of 2 skeins of this yarn, in case if you want yardage. Let me see here. Each cake is about 383 yards, and I used almost 2 full skeins. Now, of course, you could go bigger, you could go smaller, totally up to you. It stretched just past fingertip to fingertip with my arms outstretched, draped over my shoulders. It went down to about the base of my spine. So that's a ballpark figure, you know, as this with most shawls, I would say. Okay? So, with that being said, let's get started. Alrighty, row 1. Now, for this piece, I'm still using a size I crochet hook, but I'm going to be using some Red Heart Super Saver that I happen to have. It's about the same weight and everything, so I figure, why not use it? Alright, so of course, starting with our obligatory slip knot, as always. Now, Purple Iguana suggests doing a magic ring method. Well, you know me, I like to do things my own way a little bit. So, what we're going to do is we're going to start by chaining up 3. Now, if you wanted to do the magic ring method, you would do the ring and then you would chain up 2. So for me, that first chain counts as our magic ring. Works for me. So, chaining up a total of 3. Then we're going to do a shell stitch into that first chain. Okay, so now a shell is 2 double crochets, then a chain of 1, and then 2 more double crochets, all into that first chain. Oops. Alright, so we have our chaining of 2, then we have 2 double crochets, chain 1, and 2 double crochets right into that first chain right there. So that's our first shell. Then we're going to continue on by doing another shell. So we did our 1 shell, then we chain 1, and then we do another shell. So that's going to be 2 double crochets, chain 1, and 2 double crochets. Also, by the way, I will post a link to the original free written pattern in the description box down below in case if you want to follow along with that. So what the first row amounts to is our starting up chain of 2, 2 doubles, chain 1, 2 doubles, then a chain 1, 2 doubles, chain 1, 2 doubles. So it's basically 2 shells separated by a chain 1. Alrighty, so that's the end of row 1. Alrighty, row 2. So for row number 2, we're going to start by chaining up 2, turn the work, and what we're going to do is we're going to do an increase shell into this space here, this first space, because this is our first shell. So we're going to do an increase shell within the shell. So going into this space here, to do an increase shell, it's basically a shell, but instead of 2 groupings, it's 3. So we've got 2 double crochets, chain 1, 2 double crochets, chain 1, and 2 double crochets. So that's an increase shell. A regular shell is 2 groupings of 2. An increase shell is 3 groupings of 2. You see? So we got the original chain, 2, 2, and 2. All right, so then after we do our increase shell, we chain 1, okay, and then we're going to do another increase shell into the next chain 1 space, which is the space in between the 2 shells that we did initially. So that's another 3 groupings of 2. So that's 2 doubles, chain 1, 2 doubles, chain 1, and 2 doubles. All right, so we've got an increase shell, and then another increase shell, and then chain 1 again, and do in this final shell space another increase shell. So that's 2 doubles, chain 1, 2 doubles, chain 1, and 2 more doubles, all into that chain 1 space. And of course my yarn splits. All right. Okay, so we have our original 2 shells, and then we have an increased shell into the chain 1 space of each of the original shells, and then an increased shell in between the 2 original shells. Now also the neat thing about doing this technique is you can cinch that up real nice and tight, just as you would with a magic circle. All right, so that is the end of the second row. Alrighty. All right, row 3. So for the third row, we are going to start by chaining up 2, turn the work, of course, and then we're going to do a shell into the first chain space of the increased shell. So that's right here, this first chain 1 space, we're going to do a shell. So that's 2 doubles, chain 1, and 2 doubles. All right. Then chain 1, and then into the second space of the increased shell, we're going to do another shell. So that's 2 doubles, chain 1, and 2 doubles. Okay. So then chain 1, and we're going to skip this chain right here. We're not going to work into this chain space because we had our increased shell, an increased shell, and an increased shell. So we're going to skip over. We're not going to work into this space. However, into this next space, we are going to do another shell. So that's 2 doubles, chain 1, and 2 doubles. Okay. Chain 1 into the next space of the increased shell. Going to do another shell. So that's 2 doubles, chain 1, and 2 doubles. Okay, chain 1. Then again, we're going to skip this next space, and we're going to go directly towards this increased shell here. And into this first space, we're going to do another shell. So that's 2 doubles, chain 1, and 2 doubles. Chain 1, and then into the last chain 1 space of the previous increase shell, we're going to do another shell. So that's 2 doubles, chain 1, and 2 doubles. All right. So as you can see, on the previous row, we had an increase, an increase, and an increase. So for the first increase, we did a shell and another shell in the chain 1 spaces of that increased shell. And we did the same thing here and here. All right. So like I said, you're leaving this space and this space alone. Alrighty. So that, my dears, is the end of row 3. Row 4. Alright, so for the 4th row, I'm going to start by chaining up 2. We're always chaining up 2. And that's actually one of the things that I find easier in this pattern than in the wild wheat shawl pattern, which I loved, don't get me wrong, but I love simplicity, you know me. So after chaining up 2, into this first shell that we have here, we're going to do an increase shell. So that's 2 doubles, chain 1, 2 doubles, chain 1, and 2 doubles, all into that same shell space. Okay. And sometimes it's good to separate out your clusters to see, do you have enough stitches? Okay. So we've got our increase cluster, then we chain 1, and again, skipping over this space here. We're not working in between the clusters, we're working within the clusters. Okay. So it's always clusters inside of clusters, not in between. Otherwise it would stagger, when we're going up the sides. When we reach the top, that's a different story. Don't worry, we'll get there. Trust me. All right, so we did our increase cluster, then into this second cluster here, working within it, we're just doing a regular cluster. The only time in which we're going to be doing increases is on either side and in the middle, and we'll get there. So we got our 2 double crochets, chain 1 and 2 double crochets. And of course I will do a repeat for you because I like to make sure that you guys got it. All right, so we did an increase cluster, then into the next shell we did another shell, then chain 1. Okay, so now we have technically at the top 3 spaces, 1, 2, and 3. So we're doing 3 shells. So going into this shell here, we're doing another shell. So that's 2 doubles, chain 1, and 2 doubles, chain 1. So in between the 2 shells right here, we're going to do another shell. So that's 2 doubles, chain 1, and 2 doubles, chain 1, and then into this next, the second shell at the top, we're going to do another shell. So that's 2 doubles, chain 1, and 2 doubles. Okay, so to recap just a little bit, we did an increase shell, a regular shell, a regular shell, one in between. This is the spine, so we did one in between the shells, and then we did another one. So then, reaching the other side, don't forget to chain 1. So into this shell right here, we're going to do another shell, and then into the last one, we're going to do another increase. So going into the second to last, going to do a regular shell, so that's 2 doubles, chain 1, 2 doubles, chain 1, and gotta pull out some more yarn, sorry. Okay, and into the last chain 1 space of the shell, we're going to do an increase shell. So that's 2 doubles, chain 1, 2 doubles, chain 1, and 2 doubles. If I can get all of my plies. There we go. Oh dear. All right, so always double checking. Very good. Okay, so we have an increase on this side, one on this side, and at the very top we went in between the 2. All right, starting to take shape. All right, so that's the end of row 4. All right, row 5. So for row 5, we're going to start by chaining up 2. Turn the work. All right, so we have another increase shell. See how this pattern works as far as the beginning end and the finishing end. Okay, it goes back and forth, back and forth. It's a 2-row repeat as far as the ends are concerned. As far as the center is concerned, that's actually a 3-row repeat. And I'll explain that as we get there. So we just had an increase at the end. So now what we're going to do is in this space and in this space of the increase, we're just doing regular shells. All right. And like I said, I'm going to do a repeat for you so it's nice and clear. So into that first space of the increase shell, we're doing a shell. So that's 2 doubles, chain 1, 2 doubles, Okay, chain 1, and then into the next chain 1 space of the increased shell, we're going to do another shell. So that's 2 doubles, chain 1, and 2 doubles. Okay, chain 1. All right, now we're going to work our way up this way. So into this shell and into this shell, we're going to do regular shells. So into here, a regular shell of 2 doubles, chain 1, 2 doubles. Okay, chain 1. It's always a chain 1 in between the shells. All right, so now into this next shell, we're going to do another shell. So that is, of course, 2 doubles, chain 1, 2 doubles. Okay, all right, so now we have reached the top. Now we've reached the spine again. So what we're going to need to do is we need to do another increase shell. See down here, let me just pull that out. Down here, we have an increase shell. Then from that increase shell, we turned it into 2 shells, here and here. And then we turned those 2 shells into 3 shells, 1, 2, and 3. So we've got our 1 row of the increase, and we have 2 rows where they're spreading out, but then we need another increase, so that's why we're doing it here. So that's why I was saying before, where it's alternates on the ends as far as increase, non-increase on the middle of the spine, it's every 3rd row. It's 1, 2, and 3. So on the 3rd row right up here, we're going to do another increase. So can't forget to chain 1 right there. Then into the center shell, we're doing another increase shell. So that's 2 doubles, chain 1, 2 doubles, chain 1, and 2 doubles. All right, so we have another increase. See, went from increase to 2 shells to 3 shells, back to an increase. So chain 1, into the next shell, we do another shell. So 2 doubles, chain 1, 2 doubles, chain 1, into the next shell, going to do another shell. Two doubles, chain 1, and 2 doubles. Okay, chain 1. All right, so we have our increased shell down here. So into these 2 spaces of the increased shell, we're going to do a shell each. So that's 2 doubles, chain 1, 2 doubles, chain 1, into the next space of the increased shell, we're doing another regular shell. So that's 2 doubles, chain 1, and 2 doubles. And of course, I end up getting a knot, right? Of course. Naturally. All right, but I will not let it interfere. I am sorry. Okay. All right, just pretend it's not there. Just omit it from your mind. All right, so we have our 2 shells at the base here, and we have our increase up here, and we have our other 2 down on this side. All right, so that is the end of the 5th row. Isn't that pretty? All right, row 6. So for row 6, start by, of course, chaining up 2. Turn the work. All right, so as you can see, we did our 2 shells. Previously, we had an increased shell. So as I said before, it's an A-B sort of binary thing, because we had our 2 shells here. Then we had our increase. We have our 2 shells here, so we need another increase. So into the first shell, we're going to do an increase. So that's 2 doubles, chain 1, 2 doubles, chain 1, and 2 doubles. All right. And after a while, you won't really even need to think about the pattern. All you have to do is look at, ooh, pardon-moi, look at the edge and see, all right, do I need to do 2 or need to do 3 based on the previous row? It's really that simple. Again, one of the reasons why I love these patterns. All right, so we did our increase shell. Then, of course, we chain 1 into the next shell, do another shell. So that's 2 doubles, chain 1, and 2 doubles. Chain 1. And also you can see that the shells in between the sides and the top, you can just work shell in a shell, basically. It's that simple. And it's the kind of mindful, repetitious stitching that I love so much, because it's very much akin to the granny stitch, which, yes, I have a bit of a fixation on doing the granny stitch because it is so simple. All right, so just doing shells and shells. Okay, so we had our increase, regular shell in a shell, shell in a shell, shell in a shell. All right, then when we get up to the top where we have our increase, into these 2 spaces of the increase, doing a shell and doing a shell. All right. So basically you go from, an increase shell to 2 shells to 3 shells back to an increase shell. That's, 1, 2, 3, easy as that. So into that first space, doing a shell. As always, 2 doubles, chain 1, 2 doubles. Chain 1, and then into the second space of the increase shell, we're doing another shell. So that's, of course, 2 doubles, chain 1, and 2 doubles. Okay, and then into the next 3 shells, this one, and this one, we're going to do just a shell and a shell, and then into that last one, we're going to do another increase. So you could always double check with your beginning, in case if you forget, which is, hey, it happens. So, like I said, into these next 3, just doing a shell and a shell. 2 doubles, chain 1, 2 doubles, chain 1, another shell and a shell right over here. It's 2 doubles, chain 1, and 2 doubles. Come on. There we go. Chain 1, and then another shell and a shell. Two doubles, chain 1, 2 doubles, okay. Then, last but not least, see, also you can see on this side, we have our increase shell right here. We had 2 shells, so right up here, we need to do another increase. For this one, for this pattern, I would say it's really about identifying where you are at within the pattern so that you can navigate further, and it's, on the edges, it's a 2-row repeat. In the center, it's essentially a 3-row repeat, so it's really not that bad. You can just look at it and be like, yep, this is where I am. It's sort of like having a stitching compass, a little map. So we've got our increase into that last shell space, and that is the end of row 6. It's really coming together, don't you think? All right. Row 7. All right, so for row 7, start, of course, by chaining up 2, turn the work. All right, so we had an increase shell, so now we need 2 shells separating that. So into the first chain 1 space, it's a regular shell, 2 doubles, chain 1, 2 doubles. Okay, chain 1. Into the next space of that increased shell, we're going to do another shell. Two doubles, chain 1, and 2 doubles. Okay. Chain 1, of course. And then going over here, we'll just take a quick look-see. So into 1, 2, 3. Into those 3 shells, we're going to do shells and shells. And then when we reach the top up here, we need 3 shells because we're going to need 1 in here, 1 in here, and 1 in here because, like I said, increase shell, 2 shells, and then we need 3 shells. 1, 2, 3. So we're going to get there. So shell and a shell right here. Okay. Shell and a shell right there. Chain 1. Another shell and a shell right here. All right. Chain 1. Need another shell and a shell right here. Okay. All right, chain 1. And then, like I said, we need 3 shells. So a shell in this space, a shell in this space, and 1 in the middle, in between the 2 shells. On the one hand, I do not wish to ever be painfully redundant. On the other hand, I do wish to be rather thorough because that reduces confusion in the long run. And I'm not doing this to confuse you. I want to help. It's all about trying to teach you how to do something and hopefully give you an enjoyable experience at the same time. All right. And almost there for the top of the piece. So as you can see, we had our increased shell, then 2 shells, and then 3 shells by the seashore. All right. So then down this side, it's going to be shell and a shell, shell and a shell, shell and a shell, and then into the last, we have our increased shell, so it's going to be a shell in this space and a shell in this space. So, chaining 1, shell and a shell right here. And of course my yarn keeps splitting. I'm sorry about that. Such is life, right? Alrighty, so doing our shell and a shell. Chain 1, another shell and a shell. Alrighty, chain 1. Got to do another shell and a shell right here. Chain 1. 2 more doubles to finish up this shell in the shell. Okay. And then into the increased shell, 2 shells. So into the first space of the increased shell, doing a shell. There we are. Chain 1, and then a shell into the second space of the increased shell. All right. There we go. Ta-da! All right, and that is the end of row 7. Actually, I'm going to put it like this, and I'm going to show you where we are at, and then I'm going to give you a full repeat. So your work should look something like this, hopefully. Absolutely love it. All right, so without further ado, I'm going to give you a repeat. Alrighty, so to begin with, we're going to chain 2. Alright, now in the last row that we had 2 separate shells, so into the first shell we need to do another increase into that first shell space. So that's 2 doubles, chain 1, 2 doubles, chain 1, and 2 doubles. Okay, then we chain 1, and into the next shell we just do a regular shell. always 2 doubles, chain 1, 2 doubles. Chain 1, always in between shells. So I'm going to do another shell in a shell. Okay. Chain 1, another shell in a shell. Chain 1, another shell in a shell. Chain 1. All right, we're almost at the top here. And it's going to be a shell into here, a shell into here, and into that middle one, we're going to be doing an increase. So into the first of the 3, just doing a regular shell. So that's 2 doubles, chain 1 and 2 doubles. All right, chain 1. All right, into the middle shell in the top, we're doing an increase. So that's 2 doubles, chain 1, 2 doubles, chain 1, and 2 doubles. All right. Chain 1 into the next shell. We're just doing a regular shell, and we're going to be doing that until we reach the end. Okay. All right. So we got a shell and a shell right there. Chain 1. Going to do another shell and a shell right here. Chain 1. And looking at what we have, we need to do 1, 2, 3 more shell and a shells, and then on the last one we need to do an increase shell. It's always good to sort of plot out where you are in the grand scheme so that you can anticipate where you need to go. All right, chain 1, another shell and a shell. I just wish this yarn would stop splitting on me. Sorry. Okay. Another shell and a shell. Okay, chain 1. And then into the last shell space, we need to do an increase. See, we had an increase down here. Then we had 2 regular ones, so we need another increase into this space right here. So that's 2 doubles, chain 1, 2 doubles, chain 1, and 2 doubles. All right. Ta-da! All right, and we're going to keep going. Alrighty, so for the next row, we're going to chain up 2, turn the work. Okay, so we had an increase shell, so we're going to do 2 separate shells into those spaces. So that's 2 doubles, chain 1, 2 doubles. So that's 1 shell. Then into the next chain 1 space, we're going to do another shell after, of course, chaining 1 in between. Always, always. I may not say it, but I mean it. I don't wish to be confusing, and I don't wish to take it for granted that you know what I'm talking about. So we have our 2 shells going into that previous increase shell. Chain 1, and going along this side, it's going to be shell in a shell, chain 1, 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 shell in a shell, chain 1. Then when we reach the top into this increase shell, we're going to do a shell into this space and a shell into this space, separated, of course, by a chain 1. Again, it's always good to sort of plot out where you are within your pattern. So we're just doing our shell in a shell, separated by a chain 1 going towards the top. Okay, so we've got 1, and then we're going to continue on doing our chains in between the shells, doing our shells within the shells. Sally sells seashells by the seashore. Oh dear. Okay. And just going to work our way up to the top. Because it's, like I said previously, it's only at the very beginning, the very end, and the very middle that you ever have to really think about where you're at as far as the pattern is concerned. And when the piece gets fairly large, it means that those sort of thinking points become fewer and further in between, which, hey, who doesn't like that, right? All right, so almost to the top, if I ever get there. All right. Okay, and I am at the top. All right, so at the very top, like I said, we're going to be doing into these 2 spaces of the increase stitch that we did previously, a shell in each. So right into here, doing a shell, chain 1, and then into the next space of that increase shell from the previous row, we're doing another shell. Okay. You see? Just like that. Okay, so then going down this side here, shell in a shell, all the way down, shell in a shell, all the way, all the time separated by a chain 1 space. And then when we reach the very end, into these 2 spaces of our increase shell, shell in a shell, shell in a shell, increase shell. All right, so we're going to work our way down this side now. Okay. Come on, there we go. Chain one, another shell and a shell. Come on. Alrighty. Chain one, another shell and a shell. All right. Chain one, another shell and a shell. Okay, chain one, another shell and a shell down here, and we're almost there. Okay, then, like I said, because this is an increase shell at the very bottom here, at the very end, it's going to be 2 shells within this increase shell. So right into there. Into that first space of the increase shell, we're doing a shell. Alrighty. Chain one, and then into the second space of the increased shell, we're going to do another shell. Okay. Moving right along. Footloose and fancy free. All right. And I'm going to show you one more row, and then I hope that by now you're really starting to get the idea of where to go and how to know where you keep going. All right, so I'll give you one more. Alrighty, onward with the last row. So, of course, we chaining up of 2, turn the work. Now, on the previous row, we did 2 of these shells. So, of course, in this first one, we're going to need to do another increase. So for the increase shell, of course, it's 2 doubles, chain 1, 2 doubles, chain 1, and 2 more doubles. Continuing on with the binary of increase, 2, increase. All right, so again, mapping out what we need to do. So it's shell and a shell all the way across until we reach the very top, where we're going to be doing a shell into here, a shell into here, and a shell into here, because we have our increase, so we have, it's essentially 1, then we have 2, so now we need 3, 1, 2, and 3. So we're going to work our way all the way up to the top. So we did our increase in here, so into the next shell, we do a shell and a shell. Alrighty, chain 1, another shell and a shell. Okie dokie pokey, chain 1, shell and a shell. If I get there. chain one, another shell in a shell, chain one, another shell in a shell, grr, come on, there we go. Just gotta be persistent. It's what it takes. Little patience, little persistence, and you'll get there in the end. So it's another shell in a shell. Chain one, and we reached the top. So like I said, it's a shell in the shell, shell in between the shells, and a shell in the shell. There we go. So we have our shell in a shell. Okay, chain one, then a shell in between the two shells. Okay, chain one and shell in a shell. Ta-da! So again, like I said, we have our one down here, which is the increase. Then we have two, and then we have three. So then on the next row, in the center, right here, it's going to be another increase. It's going to be one regular one here, one regular one here, but in the middle, another increase. And then from that increase, you're going to do two, and then three once again. On the edges, since we just did an increase, well, on this row we're going to end with an increase, but on the next row it's going to be two shells, one into each space, and then back to two, back and forth between an increase and a separation of two. All right, so doing shells in shells all the way to the very end until we do our increase. And it's really as easy as that. And that, as I've stated before, which I will state again because it is the unadulterated truth, I love this pattern as well as a whole bunch that Purple Iguana has done on Ravelry. She does great work. And I am delighted to share it with you. Okay. Just pull up some more yarn. Finish off this shell within the shell. And even though I said that this is somewhat of a variation of the wild wheat, I like variations. It's sort of like adding garlic powder instead of oregano to your pizza every once in a while. Variety is the spice of life, and it's good to have a full spice rack as far as I'm concerned. And like I said, also I find that this pattern is a little bit easier to follow as far as the repeat. because on the edges it is a 2-row repeat, and in the center it's a 3-row repeat. Simple as that. And that is, for me, a huge selling point. All right, so we have reached the very end. So because we had our 2 shells on the last one, we need to do another increase shell. So that is, of course, 2 doubles, chain 1, 2 doubles, chain 1, and 2 doubles. Rock on. Okay, so that, I really hope, gives you a really good understanding of how this pattern works, not just on the sides, but also the center spine. And you too can make this really lovely, lacy, elegant shawl. And I really hope that you enjoyed this as much as I did, because, hey, you know I did. And if you did like this video, please hit the thumbs up button down below. Your support means the world to me. And if you have any questions or comments or what have you, I love hearing from you. So please do so in the comments section down below. And if you haven't hit the subscribe button already, please do that as well, because I try to post videos as often as I can, whether it be knitting or crocheting or audiobook narration. And also, like I said, the description for this particular pattern, the link to this pattern will be in the description box down below. So you can check that out, you can follow along, and, give it a try. It's a lot of fun, and it's really quite easy, I think. So without further ado, I want you guys to all stay inspired, stay caffeinated, and above all, stay stitching, and I will see you in my next video. Bye for now.